Anglosphere Report Breaking analysis. Every time you fill your car, every time a plane takes off, every time a container ship leaves Asia, there is one place the entire world depends on: the Strait of Hormuz. It is only 34 kilometers wide, yet around 1/5 of the world's oil passes through it. This week, that route became dramatically more dangerous. Commercial ships are changing course. Tankers are switching off their tracking systems. Military strikes continue. Diplomats are still talking, and global markets are asking one question: has the world's most important energy corridor entered a new era? Here's what happened. Before this conflict, around 130 vessels crossed the strait every day. Oil, natural gas, container ships. The flow was predictable. Today, that flow has slowed dramatically. According to the IMF's Port Watch system, daily traffic has fallen to just 34 transits, against a pre-crisis baseline of 88. According to Lloyd's List Intelligence, large commercial vessels have almost disappeared from the so-called Southern Highway, the U.S. coordinated Oman hugging route. No vessel above 10,000 deadweight tons has transited that route with its transponder switched on since July 7th. Some ships are still believed to be crossing, but with one crucial difference: their tracking systems are switched off. At sea, being invisible has become safer than being seen. On Monday, the Cyprus-flagged container ship GFS Galaxy was struck by Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps forces after allegedly taking an unauthorized route. One Indian crew member remains missing. CENTCOM confirmed U.S. forces struck approximately 80 Iranian military targets on July 7th and approximately 90 more on July 8th in response to attacks on 3 commercial tankers. Iran struck U.S. military installations in neighboring Gulf states in response. On Friday, President Trump posted on Truth Social that the ceasefire established by last month's Memorandum of Understanding is over, while confirming the U.S. has agreed to Iran's request to continue talks. A source with knowledge told Axios another round of negotiations is expected next week, possibly in Switzerland. Military operations are no longer happening around the strait. They are shaping what happens inside it. That distinction matters because every strike, every warning, every commercial decision changes how the world's energy system functions. This is no longer simply another week of tension. Something fundamental has changed. 2 developments explain why. First, the shipping collapse is now measurably worse. Only 2 LNG carriers crossed the strait in the week before this one, down from 13 the week before that, according to Lloyd's List. Over this past weekend, no LNG tankers visible on tracking data entered the strait at all. Second, President Trump has proposed the United States act as what he called guardian of the strait and has floated a 20% levy on cargo shipped through the corridor to fund military protection, a cost that would ultimately be passed to shippers, insurers, and eventually consumers. Despite the intensified fighting, Brent crude has held relatively steady, $76.58 a barrel Friday, roughly unchanged from Thursday, and up just over $4 from the previous week. That stability is itself the story. Bart Mellick, global head of commodity strategy at TD Securities, told Al Jazeera the market reflects confidence that the situation will stabilize, but warned Brent could move $10 to $15 higher over the summer. ExxonMobil Senior Vice President Neil Chapman has separately warned Brent could spike to $150 to $160 a barrel if the strait does not reopen within weeks. The more immediate cost is already visible in fuel and freight, not crude. Very low sulfur bunker fuel is up 68% since mid-February. The Shanghai Containerized Freight Index has risen 16% in a week. This is no longer just an American problem, or an Iranian problem, or even a Middle Eastern problem. The Strait of Hormuz connects energy producers, manufacturing economies, financial markets, and consumers across every continent. When shipping slows here, the consequences travel worldwide. For the United States, this is now a live test of Trump's Guardian of the Strait proposal, a role that would put continued U.S. naval commitment and revenue collection at the center of Gulf security. For Iran, its Revolutionary Guard Navy has repeatedly asserted control over the waterway, even as CENTCOM disputes that claim and points to continued if diminished, merchant traffic. For the UK and Europe, fuel and freight costs are rising well before any change shows up in a headline oil price. The everyday cost of the crisis accumulating in invoices before it reaches petrol pumps. For India, nearly 40% of its crude imports, 60% of its LNG, and 90% of its LPG transit Hormuz. An ADNOC-controlled tanker that exited the strait between July 10th and 12th, bound for Dahej port, shows supply is still moving, but only in fragments. For China, continues to receive oil through the strait, though at reduced and less predictable volumes. For global shipping and the world economy, officials are now describing a managed conflict, a direct parallel, in the industry's own words, to the Houthi disruption pattern in the Red Sea, where partial, sustained disruption becomes the new baseline rather than a resolved crisis. What happens next? Confirmed. Another round of U.S.-Iran talks is expected next week, possibly in Switzerland. Confirmed. CENTCOM disputes Iran's claim to control the strait, and reports continued, reduced commercial transit. Uncertain whether Trump's proposed toll or guardian role advances beyond a Truth Social post into formal policy. Uncertain whether LNG tankers resume transiting the strait in the coming days, the clearest leading indicator to watch ahead of any change in the oil price itself. The skeptics' challenge. Could markets be overreacting? Brent at $76.58 is well below the 120-plus peak seen during the February-March closure, suggesting traders currently expect this phase to be contained rather than repeat the earlier shock. Could diplomacy still succeed? Talks have already survived multiple collapses since the original memorandum was signed in June. That track record cuts both ways. It shows resilience. It also shows fragility. What remains genuinely unknown, how many ships are crossing dark, and whether that shadow fleet is growing. Lloyd's List's own data cannot answer that question yet. History remembers certain places not because they are large, but because the world cannot function without them. The Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Malacca, and the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just another shipping route. It's one of the pressure valves of the global economy. When pressure builds here, the effects rarely stay here. The question is no longer whether this waterway matters. The question is whether the world is entering a period where disruption becomes normal and stability becomes the exception. The situation is evolving. The evidence may change. We'll continue following it. I'm the Anglosphere Report, connecting the stories shaping the Anglosphere and the world. If a 20% toll on the world's most important oil choke point became permanent, who would ultimately pay for it? And would that price be worth the security it claims to buy?